Welcome to the Hybrid Hangout, where we answer your questions and share insights on the latest facility management trends. Whether you're in the office, at home, or anywhere in between, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of the Hybrid Hangout podcast. My name is Jennifer Heath. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at FM Systems.
And I am Brian Haynes. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at FM Systems.
And today we are going to continue on with a conversation that we started last time because this just continues to be such a hot topic, and we continue to think of different applications and potential challenges. And that is the ever-present return to office mandate. Just to kind of catch our audience up, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, it started really hitting the headlines that big organizations, Amazon, Twitter, big organizations were calling people back. And then, of course, there's an executive order bringing back all federal employees. A lot of financial organizations have announced these mandates. Where are you on it today? Because I know we kind of go back and forth on different aspects of this.
Well, Jen, it's obviously something that we hear about every single day. I was going to share a couple of articles that I saw. I saw an article today. It was behind a paywall, so I didn't read it. I kind of got the gist, but it was like JPMC doubles down on 5-day mandate. I'm not sure what doubling down is because they've already mandated, a few months ago that they would be back 5 days a week. So doubling down, I guess it means they mean it this time. I'm not quite sure what that means, but what we've been doing is obviously keeping, our ear to the trail, making sure that we understand what's really going on. We've been watching this trend go up from a utilization standpoint, and, now it's at the tipping point where it seems more people are back to the office than not. More people are back than, full-time than hybrid. The number of remote employees has kind of returned to probably what it was like, 5 or 6 years ago. It's dropping below 10% now, I think. So we're really seeing a return, I think, to a much more traditional office utilization rate in terms of the number of people being in. We are not, however, and I've said this before, I think to you, we're not seeing a one-to-one correlation of utilization to number of days per week that companies are back. So, they may be saying 5 days a week, but when you look at utilization, you'd assume if they were 5 days a week and they were 100% occupied, then they would be, as long as everybody was coming back, they'd be 100% utilized. But that's not true. Of course, there's things that happen on a daily basis. People are on vacation, or they've got appointments, or they're at a different office, they're traveling. There's reasons that would drive utilization down, of course, even in a 5-day mandate, but we're still not seeing those utilization rates. We're not seeing them hit really high levels. So that's interesting, I think, and a point that we're continuing to monitor.
Yeah, we had a client example just recently that they had gone from 3 days a week to 4 days a week. So you would assume a 20% increase in their utilization, and there was a 2% increase. And what's interesting in that is, as facility managers, if you are looking at a mandate situation and thinking, okay, this means we're going to be, max occupancy 5 days a week, 8 to 5. If you frame your energy strategy around that, you are going to be paying seemingly for a lot of energy that is going nowhere. If you've got a 2% increase in utilization when you're expecting 20, there's a lot of dollar signs that follow along with that.
Yeah, one thing that I think the market really needs to be looking at, in particular facilities and real estate, is that they need to be budgeted for higher utilization. And higher utilization is not just about having people sit at their desks, but it's the cost that comes along with a lot more people being in your building. It could be increased costs around consumables. It could be increased waste and water management. It could be increased energy, but it can also be increased capital costs. I don't think people are talking about this very much. When you start to run equipment harder, you're using your building harder, capital costs are going to come into play, right? Things are going to wear out quicker. Even things like furniture fixtures equipment, finishes, carpet, floors, all of that kind of stuff needs to be sort of factored into the reality of using our buildings at a much higher rate. So those are sort of like tangential things that I think the facilities management profession needs to be thinking about. Everything in the news is like, do we have enough seats? Is it the right space? Et cetera. But I think there's a lot more that needs to be investigated.
So, what do you think is driving the mandate? Like, I turn this over in my mind all the time. Is it wanting to get a return on the investment of the real estate? Is it really about utilizing the space? Or do we think there is some real benefit to employees? Do we think there's a lift in engagement and productivity and all those warm and fuzzy ideas?
It's a loaded question, Jen. There's a lot of answers. There's a lot of answers to this one, which are pretty interesting. There's my cynical self, which sees things as I think they might actually be, and then there's the sort of other things that we get from the market, where people are telling us why increased collaboration, better team building, better culture. All those things are not wrong. When I go to the office, I have a very different experience than when I'm home working by myself. I don't have coworkers here. It's just me. You can count my cats, which tend to visit my monitor screen every time I'm on a call. That's why I'm in a different space, because I can avoid them. But when you're at the office, there's a lot of interaction that happens. So there's value there. There's also, some maybe legacy stuff around presenteeism. Like somebody doesn't believe you're working hard enough if they can't see you. I think that's very old school. I think that maybe this is my cynical self coming in here, but I think there's some reality to this. It's a generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people who are making the decisions, the hard return to office decisions right now, are late in their careers. They've been leaders for a long time. They saw the office at a different time in a different way. And there's maybe a little bit of nostalgia for the past or something that's kind of driving a little bit of that, and not necessarily looking at the value that we got from better balance.
Mm-hmm.
What did somebody say on the webcast yesterday? I forget. We used to say work-life balance, but they say work-life integration, which I thought was kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Work-life integration. I feel like even though I'm in a hybrid workplace environment, I do go into the office when I can, and I travel a lot. Plus, I work from home a lot. I'm getting as much done as I ever have. There's no impact on that. So I don't think there's a lot to say about productivity. People say that there is, but I don't really see. I've read a lot and I read a lot about this. I'm not seeing that as the primary driver. Now, there's industries. You can't build a car in your bedroom. Well, you can't. You're not going to build 10,000 cars or 1,000,000 cars in your bedroom. That's going to be a manufacturing plant. You're not going to do open heart surgery in your bedroom. Let's hope you're not. It's got to be in a hospital healthcare setting. There are reasons that people have to be there, and that's not disputed. There are reasons that people have to be there, but there are also a lot of reasons why people don't have to be there.
Right. So to your point about maybe some nostalgia and wanting to, maybe kind of go back to an idea of what the office was 10, 20 years ago. I think for a lot of us, we don't have the best memories of the office.
Yeah.
Cube farms were not awesome.
Right.
Day-to-day frustrations within the office, not having access to the resources you need, still having to dial into calls, even though you commuted an hour to be there. What do you think we need to be considering when we think about workplace experience now? If we have these mandates, we're bringing everybody in. I'm going to say probably the quickest way to tank the morale of your workforce is to bring them back to a 1989 cube farm.
Yeah.
Zero amenities.
Well, the good news is that we all left the office for like several years and gave the great minds, the great design minds of the world and the great planners like a clean slate to redesign the office experience. So now we've got a lot of organizations that have done very cool office space that's a lot more flexible, a lot more centered around getting together in teams and ideation and creating, quiet moments and then moments that have energy. There's like all of this thinking that's going into redefining what the office looks like. And, for the most part, that does not include giant cubicle walls. It doesn't. Hopefully that's just gone forever. I'm sure that some people came back and they were like, oh my goodness, look, they didn't change a thing in some organizations, but for the most part, a lot of that stuff changed. We've got phone booths and all of these things that have sort of grown out of it. Now, my question to you, Jen, is this a chicken or an egg thing? And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because is it that like technology has changed and the office has changed due to the pandemic, or was this already happening before and it's now being realized and affected by? What are all the enablers that have changed that have allowed us to have a very different office experience? I'll call it workplace experience.
Yeah, this is my favorite question because it absolutely was already happening. And the original technology that changed everything was the cloud. As soon as your work systems moved to the cloud, you were not married to a local area network. You did not have to plug your computer in to that specific cord. All you had to do was connect to a Wi-Fi connection from anywhere. And that's what opened up everything. Like suddenly you could work from a coffee shop. You could work from home. You can travel and be in different offices and still access all the same systems. Like I am just old enough to remember those on-prem systems that were installed on a huge desktop. And it was the only computer in the world where you could get into that system. And it had to be plugged into that server.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, like seeing how technology has evolved that's enabled us to be completely different, right? So the cloud is one, connectivity is another one, right? Just like Wi-Fi and cell phone signals are so much better than they used to be. The ability to be able to get, internet access anytime, anywhere. I mean, you go in and the other one is your phone, right? Like the mobility or just the form factor of the devices are small. I was reading an article yesterday because I'm trying to think, should I get like an iPad or should I get a laptop? Because I wanted to get something new for my personal stuff. And I was reading this, the differences between the two, and they're really kind of blending. Like the technology is getting so strong. Keyboards are really light and fast. Everything connects. Doesn't matter where you are. So we're seeing all of these enablers, right? All of these little things that have been happening, that are I think enabling us to be completely different in the workplace. And that doesn't even take into account measuring performance. I mean, 10 years ago, we were doing, we called them bed checks, or, you were walking through a space with a clipboard and saying, yep, Jen's there, Brian's there, whoever's there, somebody's not there. And you were literally with a floor plan, like trying to figure out your utilization that way. Now it's so easy with IoT devices and the cloud and connectivity, being able to measure that to a really fine level. So that plus all of the other components, I think, are creating something new around workplace experience that can make it better being there.
And I think it's interesting too, thinking about the bed checks and kind of the old way we did things. One of the reasons IoT sensors and the current state of analytics is so compelling is because it's all real time. Like you are getting a continuous measurement of what happens versus a snapshot. So if somebody came around and you and I are both at our desks, yep, we get, our check mark for being there. If we immediately leave, that person cannot assume that desk is utilized for the whole day. But they would have. They were attributing utilization where it really maybe wasn't there. They were checking occupancy, not measuring utilization. And that's what we can do now.
Yeah. So real-time access to information is also part of the, I think, capabilities that's changing everything. Because if you can present information to someone in a really easy to consume format, can that make their day better? So for instance, I'll give you a couple of examples, just simple things around workplace experience, like availability, got that down, right? We could see a floor plan. You walk into our office, there's a giant display. It shows you what's available, what's not. And it's real time, it's live. I sit down at a seat, that seat's no longer available. People can see that. And that goes way beyond like booking. Booking is like I could book a space maybe 6 months in advance. I'm talking real time. If I sit down, that information's available. And as another employee, I walk in, I see that, then I'm not going to go to that seat because I know somebody's already sitting there. I need to find another place. But think about all of the other stuff, especially when we start moving towards smarter buildings and indoor air quality. Like we always talk about IAQ sensors, but it's more than that. It's other data. So indoor air quality, like temperature, humidity, all of those kinds of components. But there's also noise levels. Like, do I want to be around 50 people that are talking and it's loud? I remember going into an office before the pandemic that was, I won't mention the client. It was a really cool office, but it was designed in a kind of an alternative workplace. Remember that term, alternative workplace, activity-based working way. They got rid of all the cubicles, had all these desks that you could move around. It was so flippin' loud. I realized then that was going to be a problem for a lot of people. It was loud. And so if I need to have a private conversation, I can tell you now, if I go onto a meeting, a Teams meeting, and the first thing you do is start muting people if you can, because there's a lot of noise in the background and it really disrupts. I think our tolerance for that has gotten low. So sound is one. Light, access to light. Do I want it to be dark or light? I know a lot of developers throughout my career that just like to sit in the dark and write code. I know a lot of people who don't like that, or maybe a little bit bubblier or something, that just want a little bit more, more of the outdoor in kind of thing. So why not give people access to this? Why not let them understand where they're going and what the experience is going to be when they get there? And I think that's a big part of workplace experience that we're seeing happening.
Yeah, just giving people access to that information, because going back to the point about productivity, how do you encourage productivity? It's tricky because everybody is unique. Everybody has different work styles and different preferences. And so being able to let someone see, hey, this is a cold, dark, quiet corner, like maybe that's just what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
A particular task that I have today, and we've talked a lot about activity-based work, which I always thought made so much sense, and even in my own home office, depending on if I'm going to do something kind of different, I may move out to the kitchen table. I may go sit on my back patio because I just want some fresh air while I'm, drafting an article or whatever it is. It's nice sometimes to be able to move around and change your environment or your scene, and to have that information in real time, just maybe like right there on an app, or I can pull up a floor plan and see where it's, warmer in the building. Maybe I'm freezing to death.
Right. It's interesting because I think about our office now compared to what our office was. And the experiences when people come to our office now, they're really enjoying it a lot more than the old one, right? The old one was Cube Farm, new one, modern office design, a lot of collaboration. I will say, however, Jennifer, that we have 1/9. It's actually 1/9. I know it's splitting hairs. It's not 1/10. It's 1/9 the number of workstations that we had in the old office, but the number of people is similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar, but we've also got a lot more breakout spaces. We've got counters. We've got bank seating in our break room. We even have an outdoor deck that's got all kinds of seating. You've been there. It's really super flexible. We've got booths. We've got phone rooms. We've got all of those things. It will be interesting because I worked on that project. I helped design it with our architect, and because we wanted a different experience. But we're owned by a different company now. We're owned by Johnson Controls. And if they ever say 5 days a week, everyone's back.
You're back to the drawing board.
Well, it's either back to the drawing board or people are sitting outside and like on a bench next to the pizza place because we're not going to fit. So I'm wondering, so there's a lot of companies that say come back, right? And so what's that experience like when you go in? One of the articles I read was 1.4 to 1. And that was, let's say they have 1,400 employees. They only had 1,000 seats because they got rid of a lot of it, or they reconfigured during during the time when we were all away from the office. So like, what's that experience like? If you come back in and you can't find a place to sit, that's not good.
Well, and it's
I don't think it's good.
it's definitely not productive.
No,
So
it's not productive. You spend half your day looking for a place to sit, and then you end up sitting on a stool in a hallway somewhere. I don't know what it's going to look like. So I'm going to be fascinated because, these return to office mandates really, they started slowly through 24 and 25. They're just kind of going crazy. It's like every time I read a news article or Financial Times or something like that, somebody's announced a much more aggressive return to office policy. And the entire federal government. Not only, I was at the IFMA executive summit last week, and I overheard a woman who works in DC saying she's never seen the traffic so bad ever. We've got like a couple million federal workers, less than there used to be, but they're going back in. There's all these things that they're leading to me. To me, it's like a really bad experience, and I'm wondering. We've got to look at the flip side. And for me as a long-term thinker, I think to myself, is the experience like so bad that it overrides the benefits?
Right. And that's the risk. Like that's the huge risk in it.
Yeah.
Are you risking all that productivity? Are you risking potentially some of your top talent? Are you risking kind of that spread of, just bad morale through your teams? And how do you combat that? And I do think that there are a lot of solutions. I think people probably need to kind of step back a little bit and think and kind of decide, what do we want to prioritize in experience? First and foremost is absolutely your layout, your floor plan. You do have to be able to accommodate everyone. To your point earlier, there's always going to be people that are traveling or on vacation or whatever. It doesn't have to specifically be one-to-one. But you're going to have to be fairly close if you're really talking about 5 days. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. If you're talking about 40 hours, that's a big consideration too. Because if you're talking 40 hours, now you have to have that private space, that head down space for every individual, because everybody has that point in the day where they have to just sit down and lock in and answer the emails or, whatever it is you're doing. It's a really different consideration when it's everybody all the time. And so you've got to decide what do you want to prioritize in terms of experience, and what technology solutions are going to get me there.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that because there's only so much you can do, right? So you do the space redesign, you provide this really wonderful office environment, you do all those kinds of things. And I think about technology, and I like the experience of our old office versus our new office, because our old office was used before the pandemic and our new office is used after the pandemic. There's several years in between those two. My experience is so much different. I badge in with my phone. I can space. I can see who's available. I can do Teams meetings. I can do all of this stuff that if I really think hard, I was not doing in the old office. And and that's providing to me, frankly, a better experience because I've got access to all of this data. And we've got, you and I both know we've got a really wonderful workplace experience application that we're going to be sharing more broadly in the near future that we have here at Johnson Controls and FM Systems that I'm excited about. And it's taking into account all those things, being able to find space really easily, find your colleagues, book a space, put a service ticket in, log a visitor, like all of that stuff used to be in separate, disparate systems, and they certainly weren't, most of them weren't available on your phone. Yes, I remember some old visitor management and security systems that even our old one, like you had to use a key fob and all of that stuff. That's kind of like those days are gone, right?
Yep.
So we're providing this, which is helping. And I think that's an area where we can make a big impact.
So in talking about experience, you mentioned visitors, and that's actually a topic that has come up several times this week, people, expressing interest in visitor solutions. And it has made me think about how much it's all coming full circle. Like 2018, 2019, the concept of digitizing and simplifying and streamlining visitor management solutions was important. Like a lot of people were talking about it. It was a hot topic. And then the pandemic happened and it was like, well, visitors are not really a problem anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same with kind of this swing that we're seeing between people wanting to book desks and, manage their workstation utilization. Swinging over to, oh, we need to pay more attention to our collaborative space. What do people need? We're kind of going in this big cycle. But what's great about it is we all remember how it was before. We know the problems we were trying to solve in the first place. But now the technology is even better. We have more opportunities to inform these different decisions. We have more options to simplify these processes. I think it's really an interesting time. I'm thankful that I work from home. I appreciate that I don't have to go into an office 5 days a week. But I also appreciate that it is important in organizational cultures. I was a part of the office for many years before I went remote. I think when you're young in your career, it's probably a little bit more important than when you're more senior. I think the mandates will kind of work themselves out. But no matter what side you fall on, there is so much technology that can improve the experience and that can let us as facility people, let us manage and operate so much more efficiently.
Yeah, I think also planning for resiliency is really an important key here. And resiliency is not just about like managing disasters and things like that, but it's about technology resiliency as well. If you have a situation where you're underutilized, like we have been for the last couple of years, and you start dumping solutions like room and book desk booking or sensors to measure utilization, things like that, you may be missing out on the fact that suddenly everyone's coming back and space is going to get tighter, and you're going to have to go to probably neighborhoods and desk sharing ratios and things like that. More visitors are going to be coming back, and the more people you have in your office, the more times they're going to have visitors, right? So those kinds of things, we're actually seeing a big uptick in that right now, by the way. We're seeing a lot of interest around that, but there's also a lack of interest in things that aren't connected. So integration between systems, whether or not they all become, part of a platform, one system, or the ability to be able to connect data seamlessly through the cloud, is absolutely imperative right now to providing that experience. So those things, I think, from a facilities perspective, it can't be just like feature function, short-term memory loss, right? It's got to be like, you got to really design and select the solutions that are going to be able to handle changing conditions, because they do change. It's proven to me over the last half dozen years that conditions can change super, super fast. I'll even say that the return to office mandates could have gone a different way. With different, political conditions in certain parts of the world. Those kinds of things, different elections, things like that, changes the way you look at your real estate portfolio and the requirement for people to be back. It literally that's another component that has something to do with it. So resiliency, technology choices, making sure that you're picking solutions that help you to kind of bob and weave as things change. And you look like a facility superhero because you don't get caught flat-footed, right? When you've got that sort of broader view.
Absolutely. When you have that data to just continually inform the next decision in the face of whatever the new condition is. As things change, you always have that objective data set to go back to and say, okay, what do I do in this scenario?
Right.
All right, Brian, I think we are out of time for today, but a great discussion as always. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Again, it's always been great. Thank you, everyone.